Hey guys, come on in, come on in. I'm so sorry. I'm running a couple minutes late. I ran over on the Brian Kohlberger. I'm going to have to set my alarm on my cell phone because I got so behind on that. There was so much breaking news. If you have not seen that video yet, you will want to watch that next because I am digging into everything. So thank you so much for joining me today. Today, we're going to be talking about the Sebastian Rogers case. We're going to be discussing law enforcement, his parents, his mother's claim that she doesn't know why he walked out that door, and the statement analysis of Chris Proudfoot. I do believe that 3 a.m. video is going to hold the key to what happened to Sebastian Rogers. Children don't usually disappear from inside their own home. And in this case, we have Chris Proudfoot and Katie Proudfoot telling us. Katie Proudfoot tells us he walked out the door. She says she doesn't know why or what happened to Sebastian. My name is Jessica Della Davies. I'm an investigative journalist, and my job is to investigate crimes, crime scenes, and potential suspects and share with you how to do the same thing. If you have not subscribed to Reporter Room, please do. It's free, and like, share, and drop me a comment in the comment section below, or even better, come up and talk to me about this. So I want to just show you where Katie does say this really quick. I just, in case you missed my last live stream, I'm not going to play this whole thing. We already went through it, but I just want to show you where Katie does say that he walked out the door so that people know that didn't see the last live stream know what I'm talking about. Let me go forward to this.
All started Sunday night, February 25th.
Pretty normal. He was playing in his room.
Yes or
when I told
no?
him to go to bed.
Can you guys hear this?
He did. He said, "Good night, Mom. I love you."
Katie says she went to wake up Sebastian around 6 a.m. Monday for school, and he was gone. Within minutes, Katie says she was on the phone with Chris, who was working out of town, and they quickly called 911.
And he's not a runner. He's never run away before. I don't know why. I don't know why he walked out that door.
So there you have it. I don't know why he walked out that door. So I believe Katie Proudfoot when she tells me that she walked out the door, that he walked out the door, and that she, I believe that's what happened to him. She,
I don't know why. I don't know why he walked out that door.
So he walked out that door. We don't know which door.
I mean, he's a good kid. He's not a mischievous child by any means.
Katie and Chris say Sebastian is not on social media. While he loves to...
So I don't know why he walked out that door. I just wanted to show it to you guys with your own ears. So in case you missed the last live stream where I showed that, because I don't want, but that's not what we're doing today. We're going to go through Peter Hyatt today. We're going through a lot of the information. So let me just come on in. Tell me where you guys are from. So statistically, most children are found. Children don't disappear from inside their own home. In this case, we have Katie Proudfoot telling us that she doesn't know why he walked out that door. But he walked out that door, according to her. So what happened to Sebastian Rogers that night? Why would he have gone out the door with no coat in February when it was chilly out that night, no shoes, barefoot, without his cell phone, carrying a keychain flashlight? So I believe that 3 a.m. lights video does hold the key, in my opinion. I know some people don't share that belief, and that's fine. That's my opinion. I also saw on another channel, and I'm trying to think of which one I've been watching, obviously been going through all of the Chris Proudfoot interviews, but I saw on another channel that they had Katie, they did show her driving up and down the street on the morning that Sebastian disappeared. She doesn't mention that in this interview, but I just wanted to put it out there that she is on video camera, on doorbell camera, driving down the street. On the, I don't know if she went to the school or not, but she was at least out in her car looking for him. But she doesn't say that she went to the school in this interview. but that doesn't mean she didn't go to the school. So I just want to, be fair to everybody. So, just that 3 a.m. video, we have 3 people at least involved, in my opinion. First, we have person 1 who was in the car waiting. Somebody turned on the car, or at least turned on the headlights and the taillights. Second, we have the first person that comes out, and this person kind of waits nearby, maybe a lookout. And then third, we have the third person who comes back down from Stafford Court and then returns back to the Stafford Court area. Now, neighbor Bobby seems to think that the 3 a.m. lights video is significant. I think the neighbors are probably in the best position because they have access to each other's video footage. So was this, what happened if he walked out the door? And Katie says she doesn't know why he walked out that door. Well, what happened? We know Sebastian had chromosomal deletion syndrome. He would have been at a high risk if he would have fallen, making that added thud that Katie tells us in the second and third rendition of her story of what happened to Sebastian that night more significant, because many people are concerned that there was some type of an injury to Sebastian. Now, if there were, I would think that Katie would just simply have called 911. But, we have this interview that Katie tells us she doesn't know why Sebastian walked out the door. I believe her. I believe he walked out the door. The question is, why didn't Katie tell law enforcement about him walking out the door? Or did she? Did he walk out alone? Was he lured out of the house? Did someone escort him out of the house? Was he carried out of the house or helped out of the house? And why didn't the dogs alert, since they weren't put up, they weren't put away till she went to bed around midnight? And why would Sebastian go out that door without shoes on, without a coat, and without a cell phone if he was really planning to run away? Or was he planning to come right back inside? Or was he put out that door? Was he walked out that door without his shoes and coat as a punishment? Or was it something more nefarious? Everything I'm sharing with you is my opinion, and opinions are not facts. So let's listen to Peter Hyatt on this.
We didn't see that. We had to have the silence broken. And so that first interview, I concluded in terms of statement analysis that mother and stepfather were concealing information about the case and the time period of the information that's missing was just before he went missing, just before he, in their words, he left.
He walked out that door. He walked out that door. That's what Katie tells us.
And so I knew immediately something was wrong with this case. But some other observations on the language. Mother and stepfather did not give an indication that they...
I just want to make sure, can you guys hear this okay? Is everybody able to hear this? Yes or no? Just let me know. I don't want to play a video and be commenting on it and then find out you guys couldn't hear me, because I've done that before. Say his name, Sebastian Wayne Drake Rogers. You know what? Let's do that really quick too. Let me do that. Let me pull him up. Let me just pull up a picture of this young guy, this teenager, this sweetheart. My computer's thinking. I will come back to this with Peter Hyatt because I do think this is really interesting. This was some of the last work that he did. Okay, so this is Sebastian Wayne Drake Rogers. He is now 16 years old. He disappeared when he was 15 years old. He was reported missing on February 26th of 2024, excuse me. His last proof of life would have been on February 25th of 2025, if you believe either the garbage truck video or if you believe the Texas Roadhouse video. But either way, February 25th is his last proof of life outside of his mother, Katie Proudfoot. Sebastian was last seen wearing a black shirt, black pants, and he was wearing black rimmed glasses. These are photos of him. If you have any information, call 1-800-TBI-FIND, F-I-N-D. That's 1-800 TBI find FIND. All right, let's go back to Peter Hyatt. Let me grab that. And can you
They
guys
knew he was dead, at least in the language.
So can you guys let me know if the volume is okay with that? Yeah, deep respect. Peter Haidt, if you don't know, he passed away. He had stage 4 cancer, and what a loss. What a loss for everybody that knew him, his family, the true crime community. I mean, what a tremendous loss. He was a good and decent man who did statement analysis for law enforcement. So just want to make sure you guys can hear him. Do I need to turn?
Concealing information about the case and the time period of the information that's missing was just before he went missing, just before he, in their words, he
Thanks,
left.
Benjaz.
And so I knew immediately something was wrong with this case. But some other observations on the language. Mother and stepfather did not give an indication that they knew he was dead, at least in the language. With respect to others' opinions on that, I could be wrong on it, but I'll explain why a little bit, why that is. So there was nothing for about a week, no calling out, nothing. And then we saw this video where, to me, I'm not a body language expert, but it looked like a hostage video to me. Blink twice to tell me you're okay or you need rescue, where he dominated and he was in control of the information. After that, it is as if they have gone on a tour. And what it really is an apologetic tour. Apology meaning defense of the stepfather. Now, I'm going to comment on some of the interviews. I can't separate which one is which. There's been too many. So they got the memo. People were upset they weren't speaking out. Now they're speaking out all the time, and the content is so important. The content is this: Chris is a great guy, and people should mind their own business. And a common theme for him is, you better respect me. In all that I've heard, other than at times an interviewer directly asking, I've not heard Chris speak of what his stepson is going through while missing.
Right. We heard Katie talk about how it felt for her. I haven't heard either one of them thinking about what Sebastian was going through. I haven't heard them say, in the first few interviews, I went through both of Duchess's interviews, which they refused to get on camera. And then I went through the Nancy Grace interview. We covered that. And then most recently, I did the one that they did on the local news station. And on none of those did I hear them, without being prompted to do so, make an appeal to find Sebastian. And on none of those did I hear any empathy or concern of what Sebastian might be going through. But let's listen to Peter Hyatt on this. You guys know I have to offer commentary.
Chris perceives himself as a victim, and he's ready to fight. I know that some of the interviews are very difficult to watch or listen to because the interviewers just talk and talk and talk, and they don't understand. They don't hold the information. He does. And now that he's allowing her to speak, she does. Let them speak. Let them speak for themselves. When someone asks a compound question, it allows the person being interviewed to pick and choose what he would like to answer. When they ask a multi-compound question or go on in a moralistic sense, okay, there's no reason to moralize in a case like this. A child is missing. We want the information. But when they ask a multi-compound question, very likely the subject of the interview, if he is showing deceit, which Chris is now, he's going to pick up on one of those things and use it for an answer, because they're suggesting answers. So it's frustrating. They don't know that, they don't have training in that. And they'll go on about some personal experience and they think they're building rapport. Not with him. I said recently to someone, I've interviewed him 100 times. I haven't interviewed him. What I mean by that is I have hundreds of times interviewed controlled abusers. And almost always they're a step parent or a boyfriend.
And this is why I said we already know who and what Chris Proudfoot is all about. From learning from Peter Hyatt, we already know what he is. And that's why I wanted to take a look at Katie.
And his language gives us a lot. So this morning I was listening to yet another interview, and the usual frustration of some of it is tainted by the interviewer. Fast forward past the interviewer's monologue, it could be difficult to get any type of a pure answer. When he goes off for himself, then we get some. And this time, and you're seeing it more now, she's allowed to speak, and speak she does. So there's some things I want to talk about that, and some of the things they said that are revelatory. So I posted on X, which was Twitter, short commentary, a little bit of analysis, that sort of thing about my views of the case. In their initial interview, they were not just repetitive, which is sensitive, but they spoke reliably that he walked out the door. And of course, some with training will question about why a door, and the door is very sensitive. As they're speaking now, they're still staying to that. And consider they may be telling the truth. And what they're maybe concealing, what I believe they're concealing, is an altercation of some form and an escalation that was more than just that Sunday. That goes back and part of the history for at least, I think, at least 2 years. And I'll get to some of that questions. So,
and is this why all of the photos that are being shared currently of Sebastian Rogers by, his mom and Chris Proudfoot and in video are all look like they're at least a couple of years old? What do you guys think? Are you watching closely?
One of the things I posted on X was that Child Protective Services should be fully engaged here in a full investigation, and they should interview everyone, including the paternal grandmother, Seth's mother. She has said she has information. She needs to be interviewed. She needs to be heard. She should have been interviewed by law enforcement, but no less, Child Protective Services know that. One of the things that happens with a missing child case, you say, well, why would Child Protective Services get involved in a missing child case? Because we don't know what caused the child to go missing. Now, let's say the child is a victim of kidnapping. Were the parents neglectful that someone was able to get into the house? Well, how could they be neglectful if someone broke into their house? Perhaps they were intoxicated. These are things that have to be known. Also, patterns of behavior have to be known. So the interviews would be, with a missing child case, to find out if that child is found, should that child go back to this house again? Now, I covered quite a bit a while back on Summer Wells' case. And the drug involvement alone would invite all sorts of trouble onto that property. And then there was the language from the father that indicates sexual abuse. And it was a really bad case. And she's still technically missing.
And that case was never solved. And I'm just curious if you guys feel like law enforcement dropped the ball on this early on. Should they have, Seth was begging to get TBI and the FBI involved. Should they have been involved from day one? Hi, Orange Wedge. Come on in. Tell me where you guys are from. Ed Jazz is here. Thank you for modding today. This is our head mod. Ed Jazz is our other head mod, Brother Mike. Thank you so much for modding today. Pepper, thank you for modding. Come on in, you guys. I saw Holly here. Thank you for modding. Hi, Lucy. Great to see you. Trisha said, this is amazing statement analysis by Peter Hyatt. Yes, definitely. Hi, Mark David. Glad you're here. Hi, Dabs. Come on in. Tell me where you guys are from. Christine is here. Good to see you. Christy's here. Sorry. The Jewel says, respect for Peter Hyatt. Yeah, he's really good at what he does. M. Cunningham says, there was no footprints outside of his home. And there was the dogs didn't get a scent either from what we've heard. The only person we've heard that the dogs got a scent from was through Chris Proudfoot that I know of. If maybe there was somebody else, like I said, I haven't seen every single video that's ever been made on this case, because this case is over a year old. There's hundreds and hundreds of videos, but what I am doing is going through the Proudfoot's early videos, and people are like, why are you focusing on them? Because that's the house he disappeared from. If he had disappeared from Seth's house, I would be going into everything to do with Seth. But he did not disappear from Seth's house. And Seth has the most ironclad alibi, in my opinion. He was at his work as a prison guard, where he would have been on camera, parking, on camera, going into the job, on camera while on the job, and on camera leaving the job. And he worked a 12-hour shift. So that's why. So yeah, I get it. Yeah, please give this a thumbs up. Let YouTube know we're doing a G-rated. Hey, Patricia, you got lost. I know I changed over from, I was running a couple minutes late. I got the Brian Kohlberger. I was worried I wasn't going to be able to get it all done because we had all this breaking news going on today. But let's continue on listening to Peter Hyatt. Thank you, Joel. I'm glad you can hear me. Glad you can hear Peter. Yeah, she's swaying. She's swaying, and she does a deep breath, but then she says, you know, he walked out the door. So let's take her at her word. The question is how and what happened and why was he, if she knew he walked out the door, then she would have known he didn't have shoes on. Why didn't she go get him then?
So we want to know, is the child in jeopardy if the child returns to this home? So we need to know what the home was like. We need to know the quality of the relationship between mother and child. We need to learn the history. That means, in this particular case, mother, stepfather, bio dad, grandparents, aunts, uncles, teachers, coaches, pediatrician, neighbors, anyone. And one of the questions asked, do you have concerns? And what you may learn is, yeah, we've had concerns. Or no, I don't let my own son go over there, and hear the reasons why. And so it's not accusatory towards anyone. It's the gathering of information.
And that's why I think depicting neighbor Bobby as being the nosy neighbor, if you think back to the Chris Watts case where neighbor Nate, got him loading up his truck on camera and also proved that Shanann had not left the house with anyone else. She would have been caught on camera if she had walked out that door. I think, allowing for the neighbors to come forward without being shamed or made fun of and listening to what they have to say is really, really important. We need to let them speak to us and give them an opportunity to say what they know. Same thing with his teachers. They should also, be able to speak to what they know without being shamed or, having to be afraid on this, but because they're going to be made fun of because they're nosy neighbors if they dare to say what they believe happened. And just because we don't like the narrative of what somebody tells us happened doesn't mean we shouldn't be listening, because we don't want to do just confirmation bias. We want to try to find out what happened to Sebastian. So my question is, did law enforcement drop the ball on this out of the gate? Because I feel like maybe TBI and FBI needed to be involved sooner. And, if Peter Hyatt's picking up on all of this, and the interview that I played for you with Katie, where Katie admits that he walked out the door. She says she doesn't know why he walked out the door, but she admits he walked out the door, not carried out, not, She doesn't say any of those things. So I don't know, how did he get out the door? But I do think that that's significant. And I do think the neighbors should be able to come forward and tell us what they witnessed. How was he being treated in that house? To the teachers, why did you feel like you needed to call CPS? And CPS, why aren't you investigating this case? And maybe they are and giving it to law enforcement, but I'm just really shocked that nothing more is being done when there was so much evidence, in my opinion, of and so many red flags that all of you guys saw. I'm not a professional statement analyst. I'm going by what Steve Johnson said. I'm going by what Deception Detective said. I'm going by what Peter Hyatt has told me. So, well, I'm going by what profiler Pat Brown has shared. And if we're all having these, alarms, and we're getting this confirmation from all of these statement analysts and profilers, I think we just need to keep it open for the neighbors to come forward. So what I would say is if the neighbors want to come forward, you can stay incognito. You don't have to get on camera. But please come forward and tell us, what did you see? What did you know? What was going on at that house?
We need to know.
We do.
And so in interviewing a pediatrician, for instance, have you had concerns? He opens the chart and maybe there's red marks there. I've addressed them. And my follow-up question to the pediatrician would be, have you met the stepfather? What was your impression? Because he leaves quite an impression. So the Child Protective Services, Department of Children and Family, whatever it's called in different states, should have been involved immediately, and Seth's mother should have been interviewed right from the start, both law enforcement and in Child Protective Services. Most of my viewers know that I'm very slow to criticize law enforcement. Oftentimes there's things behind the scenes that we don't know of, and that sort of thing. This should have been done. This should have been done.
So that tells me that Peter Hyatt believes that this wasn't done. So again, did they drop the ball on this? I can see why Seth was begging to have the FBI come on board. But how long until they came on board? How long until they really got in there? Why didn't Child Protective Services, every time a child goes missing and there's CPS cases open on that child, or recently closed, or maybe ever closed, I think we need to make sure that they're funded well enough that they can investigate and find out why Sebastian may have disappeared.
The history is so important. I had said recently, there's no way this guy doesn't have Child Protective Services history. No way. And then I learned this morning from listening to that interview that apparently he set up, or he insisted upon, he does have CPS history. And what he said was, in 2 states, almost as if he's bragging about it, what he's doing is he's getting out in front of it. He'll answer the accusation before it hits him. And as people who are experienced with being investigated for child abuse understand, the Child Protective Services can't speak publicly about it. So the parent or step-parent investigated can say anything they want, and they do.
And I think it's absolutely ridiculous that with Sebastian being gone over a year, that Seth cannot tell us what these CPS reports told him. I just, I can see him maybe wanting to redact things, but why is he by law being prevented from releasing this information to the public when it's been over a year and law enforcement still has not ruled anybody in or ruled anybody out? Let's listen to Peter Hyatt.
And the caseworker, the department that handles this, they can't speak to it anyway. So there's nothing they can say. It's all one-sided. They can give information with police, though, and should. So what does the stepfather's language reveal? And one of my associates, Jenny, did an excellent job on we call it a psycholinguistic profile, a profile based on the language. And I alluded to this when I said, I've interviewed him 100 times, meaning that there's a pattern that emerges. He has the classic language of an abuser. And what I mean by classic is that it's repetitive, it's patterned, and it's easy to spot.
And again, this is coming from a statement analyst, Peter Hyatt, who trains law enforcement on statement analysis. For those of you that don't know, I first learned about Peter Hyatt when I was watching the Richard D. Hall series. When Richard Hall came over from Scotland to sit down with Peter Hyatt to have him analyze one of the early interviews from Kate and Jerry McCann on the disappearance of Madeline McCann. If you haven't seen that series, it's excellent. And Peter does a great job. I was so blown away that I, have followed what he's done ever since.
If someone's experiencing that, they're going to know right away. Yeah, there we go. And when he was talking this, well, for me, it was this morning, but maybe it was last night when it was aired. He confirmed everything that Jenny wrote about. He confirmed it. About being crystal clear, that emphatic forcefulness, the aggressiveness. Some of the descriptions people have used, including Jenny, combative, authoritarian. He is also acutely defensive. This is a guy that does not like to be insulted. And he went on and on and on. And he's done that defending himself. He ended up admitting that he has, nothing to hide. And then, of course, he doesn't answer questions. But in this particular case, he did about his marriages. This is his 5th marriage. And if you've seen some of the transcripts from Facebook, he's on his 5th marriage giving marital advice. That's insight into personality. I don't care how many times he's been married. I care about this poor kid. But what matters is what he's revealing. He's had 2 that he admits up to now, at least 2 CPS investigations, or at least in 2 states. I think there might be more. At one point, he was asked about Sebastian coming between them in a sense to protect his mom. And he gave a very strong laugh. A very strong laugh. Let's see if I can get that.
And we've seen him laughing in other places where we felt like it was inappropriate. Where it's like, why is he laughing there? What's so funny? Is this appropriate? Thank you, NJAS, for gifting a Reporter Room membership. I also do want to announce the winner of, we did a giveaway at the 40,000 subscribers, and I should be posted up on the community tab post as well, but it is Barbara Young won. And Barbara, if you're watching, you have 10 days to claim it. You just need to be on PayPal or Stripe so I can get the payment to you. But congratulations. And I will be giving out 10 channel memberships over the next couple of weeks as well. So thank you so much. And we just did it random from the comments section for subscribers. If you were subscribed and you left a comment. So I did post on the community tab how to DM me on Twitter. And so anyway, I'll be on the lookout for you. Back to Peter Hyatt, because this, I just wondering if you guys think that law enforcement had dropped the ball on this. Should CPS have been, and not just law enforcement, but should CPS have been investigating? Same thing with Summer Wells. We did know that the brothers were removed, but we never heard anything. We've still never seen the body cam footage or any kind of really detailed information from law enforcement as to when they arrived on the scene, what the Wells, Candace, and Dawn told law enforcement then. So I asked you guys, is it possible that somebody else was at home watching YouTube videos on the Summer Wells case and on the Riley Strain case, and maybe decided that, rather than go on to mainstream media right away, because remember, Chris Proudfoot chased, according to him, he told the news crew that was outside of his house to get off his lawn. And said they went on YouTube. And Duchess did a great job with both interviews. And Crystal was really honing in on this, on the lie detector test.
A strong laugh And I listened to that. I said, "Oh, here's the tough guy. Here's the tough guy. Here's the guy that laughs off that someone would need to come between them." Oh, he's come between them. I think that might have come from the dad as he's speaking more. We also learned how much he dismisses questions that are relevant. There were intelligent questions being asked over several interviews. One question that he became very dismissive of was he was asked, "Do you lock your refrigerator?" And he acted as if it was absurd. It was the mother talking about that all Sebastian ate was sugar, which means a glucose roller coaster for him and his dysregulated emotions. And so that was a good question to ask. It's one of the questions I thought, hey, someone's paying attention. Someone may have some experience there. Because there's all sorts of issues around locking a refrigerator. Sometimes it's for the child's own safety. Sometimes it's because they're being treated cruelly. But it's quite nuanced. It was a great question. Another person asked, "How long have you been married?" And what he says is, that has nothing to do with the investigation. It has everything to do with the investigation. Your demeanor, your relationship, what the household is like. If you're saying that he walked out the house, and I think you're telling the truth there, if you're saying he walked out, we want to know why. And all these things can point to the reason why. The language where he keeps talking about how brash he is, he's brash while the stepson is missing. And when someone says that, and you probably heard this in different phrases, "Hey, I really tell it like it is." Okay, so you are someone who irritates others and brags about it. You're giving yourself a license to be that way, to be angry. No, this guy's got some real serious anger issues.
Okay, so this isn't just me saying this. This isn't just you saying this. This is a statement analyst, a professional statement analyst who trained law enforcement prior to his passing. And this was one of the last cases that he did it was for Sebastian.
He's controlling, he's aggressive. The mockery of Sebastian was rough, I think, to hear. Everything he wants to challenge and say, "Let's see the evidence, let's prove it, let's prove it." I've heard him speak a lot now for concern for himself. I haven't heard anything about concern for Sebastian.
And you guys have been saying the same thing to me, and in the comments. So Katie was concerned for herself. She wouldn't want anybody else to go through this. Lots of concern, for themselves. But where was their empathy for Sebastian? Was he cold? Was he hungry? Was he tired? Who had him? Was he safe? No, I didn't hear them asking any of those. Just, me, and more me. And Chris Proudfoot's defensiveness in multiple interviews, he's polite on some and not polite on others. And then Katie's willingness to lie for him on Nancy Grace about whether or not the CPS case was, had happened recently, tells me that this poor kid was getting gaslit at home. If she would lie to Nancy Grace and lie to all of us about when the CPS visits were, and I proved to you that showed you that Chris Proudfoot lied because he went on Smiley's and admitted Sebastian was 15 when this happened. And Seth tells us, and his PI Heather, and I showed you the footage on that, PI Heather said that it was recently closed, like in the weeks leading up to his disappearance. What do you guys think? Are you watching closely?
It doesn't mean he killed him.
Right.
It means he cares about himself. I think Sebastian, what we're seeing in the language or hearing is what Sebastian lived under. And I think Seth is telling the truth that Sebastian didn't wear a diaper at his house, but did at the mother's house. That speaks to anxiety and could be worse. I don't want to get into that now, but in the least, it can speak to anxiety.
So was Sebastian feeling anxious? Could you imagine what it would be like to be under the control of Chris and Katie Proudfoot? I think it would have been, if you didn't have anxiety before Chris Proudfoot came into your life, I think you would if you were under his rule. With the, if you forget to wear a belt, he's going to use one on you. If you tell a lie, he's going to use one on you. And you have a chromosomal deletion syndrome and you're special needs and you have autism. This case is just, it's grabbed all of us for a reason. It's absolutely heartbreaking to think of what Sebastian was going through in that house. So Katie tells us he walked out the door. She doesn't know why. I believe
being a 15-year-old
I believe she saw him go out the door. Sorry.
under this could be worse. I don't want to get into that now, but in the least, it can speak to anxiety of being a 15-year-old under this super insecure, acutely defensive, controlling, narcissistic, aggressive, very little man, which may indicate that Sebastian either left on his own or was put out by the mom. I'm not beyond that one yet.
And that's where I'm wondering too, because she said, I don't know why he walked out that door. But she said she was in the living room talking to Chris Proudfoot. We heard the dogs in the background on one of their interviews barking. Yep, 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 yep. Wouldn't they have alerted if a stranger had come up to the door? I think they would have. And why on that night of all nights, at the end of Sebastian's best day ever, were those dogs not sleeping in the bed with Katie Proudfoot? Why were they put up or put away on that night?
Let me give you a reason. It's a hint. I don't know if it's true or not. It's a hint. Let's see if I can show it to you here. It's just a small thing that I heard her say audibly that I was concerned about. He went outside to take out the garbage because it was his chore. And what those that are in training will recognize is that there's much sensitivity there. Okay, she explains why he went outside, and you'll see this. This is the explanation of why he went outside. But then she doubles up on it. And I heard that it's now very sensitive, and it's often a sensitivity that is indicative of deliberately withheld information. Once you told us why he went outside, we're done. You didn't have to double up on it. She did. She felt the need to double up on it. And I thought to myself, did she lock him out without his shoes at the behest, I think, of the stepfather, who shows no empathy? He has shown no empathy. He may respond when he's fed something, but when he's speaking freely, when he's choosing his own words, when he is now off talking, he doesn't show empathy. Did he, on the phone, tell mother, lock him out? Is that why she has this, what we call like a hyper need to explain why he was out there?
And then think about this. Remember, she told us that she searched for him for 1 minute flat, right? And then in another, that was to, I think, Olivia. And then in the other telling, and I'm not saying 1 minute versus 3 minutes, she says that after 3 minutes, she panicked. But she would only have panicked, and she went in his room, right? I woke him up, but he wasn't there. What? That doesn't make sense. I woke him up, but he wasn't there. That doesn't make sense either. But, is this scripting? Is this storytelling? Let me know what you guys think.
His stepson is missing. He called his stepson a liar. And Chris is the victim. CPS isn't going to answer that.
And Katie stood up for Chris Proudfoot. She lied to all of us. She lied to Nancy Grace. She lied to all of us about the CPS visits. She lied too.
So they went from not speaking to now not stop speaking. He also said there's someone that does a YouTube channel that he doesn't like. And this is his theme, that he's giving these interviews to make things crystal clear, of course, the emphasis, but supposedly to get his stepson's name and face out there still. And then he says, but he won't do an interview with this one fellow because he's making money off it. And you see in some of these interviews, thank you for your $10. And, it seems like a televangelist type of deal. And it's distasteful. Would that stop you from getting your missing child's name and face out there? Would you really care? And then he demands respect. He demanded it from Sebastian, and he demands it from the audience. He's making demands on people he has no control over. He's trying to control the narrative. So my opinion on what happened is that he got locked out of the house, and both are responsible. And I think there's much more in terms of domestic violence and child protective services involvement than his minimizing statement about it. Much more.
We heard from Nina Gomez that he gave her child like a what did she say, a bloody lip, something like that. Smacked her across in the mouth.
This is an angry man. He's not afraid to show his anger. He'll call himself brash over and over and over. The one thing I found that was quite scripted was the mother is really good at repeating. And he said, I love you, Mama. And I think some people don't understand why I flagged that, why it's so important. It's generally a sign that someone has a need to persuade what a wonderful relationship we have. It's not that you or I say, I love you to your children, or your children say it to you. That's expected. It's the need to make that public and make it public repeatedly. So I can say, and he said, I love you, Mama, and then totally forget about supposedly searching the house and getting in the car and driving around. Because the priority is self-defense. I think they caused his disappearance because of an abusive household that he was raised in. He's the language of a classic abuser. And the targets are generally women and children. So let me see if they have any questions and rebuttals, please. Because I don't know what happened, and I don't know if he's alive. Like anyone else, you lose hope. Oh, about the stepfather's language. He doesn't offer any hope. He was fed that a couple times by a couple interviewers, but he didn't offer any.
Yeah, he said hopeless, helpless and hopeless on a never-ending roller coaster ride, on the interview that we reviewed together on the last live stream that we did together.
Help. It's not.
Let me back up what Peter take.
That he was raised in. He's the language of a classic abuser. And the targets are generally women and children. So let me see if they have any questions and rebuttals, please. Because I don't know what happened, and I don't know if he's alive. Like anyone else, you lose hope. Oh, about the stepfather's language. He doesn't offer any hope. He was fed that a couple times by a couple interviewers, but he doesn't offer any help. It's natural that after all this time that he would be the first to crack. Based on his language, he did not have a good relationship with Sebastian. Based on his language. So he'd be the first one of denial, whereas you'll hear the father, who will come probably second, and the mother is still speaking as if he's alive. And again, with respect to those who have the opinion that there was more direct involvement, but I think that he was put out. I think it was discipline at this point. And if more information comes out, if they get some clean interviews, it may look differently. But if I am with Child Protective, if I am with the law enforcement, I'm looking at an abusive household that Sebastian wanted to get away from. Some of your theories or questions, let's see if I can take them here.
All right, you guys. So, yeah, he was hopeless on the never-ending roller coaster ride. Like there was never going to be an end to this. Carol thinks Sebastian was pretty thin. And I just think the fact that he, has so many red flags. Thank you to Enjosh. She gifted another reporter membership. If you guys got that, please let me know who you are. That's so nice of you, Enjosh. Thank you. Diane says, Katie Proudfoot laughs inappropriately too. Tammy says, I'll take it. Barbara doesn't claim it. Baby Son Forever says, Holly Golightly, it's not something you can overcome. No scent. Hi, Jody. Sweet Cry says hello. Let's see. Tammy says, in my opinion, for sure. Welcome. Oh, it's nice to have Australia here. Lady Peach says, rest in peace, Peter Hyatt. You'll always be remembered and missed. You were the best in your profession, in my opinion. Thank you for helping so many victims. That, he has a legacy as a wonderful father, a wonderful husband, a wonderful grandfather, and for helping so many victims. He truly was an advocate for children. Baby Said First says, should be brought up every time against the walked out the door rhetoric. Yeah. Myrna says, Katie Proudfoot has two versions. Sebastian walked away through the door or when she woke up and he wasn't there. Right. And she acts like she's surprised, after searching for him for either 1 minute flat or 3 minutes. But either way, it's a very short period of time. And Pat Brown, who's a profiler, said, honestly, she said that why would she be panicking after searching for him for just 1 minute flat? He's a teenager. Maybe he went outside. Maybe he went to the bathroom. Maybe he went to the car for something. Why would you be panicking that fast? Unless you knew. This is me saying this, unless you knew he walked out the door. And she tells us, I don't know why he walked out that door. If she was in the living room, then she had to have seen him go out. If I were law enforcement, I would be wanting to interview her and say, which one is that door? And did he walk out alone? Was he accompanied out? Was he pushed out? Was he walked out that door? Because when I woke him up, he wasn't there. That was just like such a huge red flag. It sounds like at some point she did wake him up, but maybe not that morning. Or maybe she woke him up earlier. When I woke him up, he wasn't there. Not when I went in to wake him up, he wasn't there. I woke him up, he wasn't there. Just so many red flags, you guys. And Chris Proudfoot, is sus. This is Holly saying this because he took a belt to Sebastian before and he wanted him out of the house to have faith, among other things. Yeah, and I'm not saying Chris Proudfoot did anything to Sebastian. My point is that who benefited the most from Sebastian's disappearance? Chris Proudfoot did, because when Sebastian disappeared, so did those CPS cases. And what Peter Hyatt is saying is, CPS should have gone in harder at that point. It should have been more of an investigation at that point, not less. It should have been more of an investigation to find out what was going on in that house. Not just everything gets closed. It should have been reopened Tammy says anybody with kids knows how important sugar management is, let alone with a family with autistic children. Yeah. And and he just cherry picks what channels he wants to go on. And unless you're fawning all over him and telling him, I'm not saying this on the early interviews. I mean, like now, unless you're like, really, mwah, 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 going to kiss his butt, he's not going to come on your channel. Early on, he was going on and just being, awful. Like Trisha, who runs Web's Live. I showed you some of that interview. That, he was just horrible to her compared to how he acted on Nancy Grace. It was very telling of how he treats women and children. Very, very telling. But like I shared with you, when I watched Katie Proudfoot on Nancy Grace lie to all of us and say that the CPS had been several years ago, I suddenly realized how complicit Katie was. And although initially I saw this as like maybe like you guys did, like a hostage situation, like coercive control type of situation, the more I've watched her and just seen how cold she is, the more I'm thinking maybe she's the smarter one of the two of them. But, she tells us that he walked out the door. Yeah, he was, Jody. I'm glad you're here, Lady Peach. Carol said Sebastian is pretty thin. Orangewood said, my house, my food, my wife, my mother, my truck. Yeah, me, 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 me. Me, 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 me. And I thought it was weird that Duchess is offering to put up a billboard and neither Chris or Katie are thanking her. She's going to pay for this with her donations from her subscribers. And maybe they thanked her after the interview, and then the next time they were on, she said, I only have enough to keep it up for a couple more days. They still don't offer to chip in. When he saw the news crew outside, he got asked about that in Duchess's interview. He said, well, I just didn't want them on my lawn. If you had a missing child, wouldn't you welcome the news? Wouldn't you go out there and talk to them? Would you chase them away? That's what he did to neighbor Bobby when she was driving around. Wouldn't you say thank you to your neighbor? And I just want to say, Kami, thank you so much for being a channel member for 22 months. She says, so happy to be here. Have you hit the like button? Thank you, Kami. All right, let's listen in on Peter Hyatt, because I just think listening to an expert, and I did say his name repeatedly when I did my last live stream, that I was relying on information from Peter Hyatt, that I was relying on information from Steve Johnson, that I was relying on information from Deception Detective, and that I had watched some Shay's Place videos as well, that I just did feel like, but I thought, let's listen to Peter himself. And maybe next time we should go through what Steve Johnson saw or what his take was.
Again, a lot of the questions are going to be, I don't know. Where did they take him to teach him a lesson? I don't know. I don't think they took him anywhere. I think that long phone call may have been, hey, he didn't come back. He didn't come back. Well, just wait. He's got to learn. He's got to learn. This guy thinks he's a tough guy, meaning the stepfather. My concern is that he fell into water and he hasn't been recovered yet. That's my fear. My hope is that he met off with someone to run away and they're hiding him. That becomes weaker and weaker because the person that did that is putting themselves in legal risk. They could have gone directly to police and directly to Child Protective Services, the authorities, and got some form of sanctuary for Sebastian. There's always a rush to blame Child Protective Services. Remember, what they believe and what they can prove sometimes is two different things, very similar with law enforcement.
And I think we could fund them better, right? We could fund them better.
His special needs and his behaviors were significant. And stepfather's telling us that. The repeating of the personal space, mom saying, you don't go into your teenage son's bedroom at night. They're telling you. They're telling you. You think.
Katie also told us in one of the interviews that he growled. So again, that's a negative thing to say about a child that's missing.
Think about a child going missing. How the parents, the innocent parents, how they talk. they're always concerned with what the child is experiencing right at the moment, and they bring it back. And they sometimes talk about themselves when they're asked about it, but then they go back to the child. You cherish every moment. They're what we call high hormonal events, which leave imprinting or etching upon the brain. You don't call a victim a liar. No shoes, no jacket. If that was discipline, it's pretty harsh. Good comment. I think he experienced worse. I think he experienced worse. Yeah. You know, you're talking about this type of autism with a 15-year-old. So you have puberty now coming in. You have someone who's not regulated as others are. And that's why I say, no, this was not mild. If I was his bio dad, I probably would say it was mild because I can't accept how things are. And I understand how challenging that would be, how difficult, what a heavy childcare burden that must be. And he apparently wanted friends terribly, and that didn't work out. I also wonder if some of the neighbors who wouldn't let their kids go over also said, we don't want to be around that guy, Chris.
I wonder the same thing. I'm wondering, Chris Proudfoot's made it out that somehow Sebastian was incapable of making friends, that he couldn't have friends over. But I'm wondering if parents didn't want their kids over at the Proudfoot house because of the Proudfoots. I don't know. What do you guys think? I do. We're not ending. We're not done. This interview's not done. We're going to or this live stream from Peter's not done. We're going to finish it together. But I just do, before we get to the very end, I do want to say thank you to our producers, Jazz, Sasha Angel, George Brown Pepper, and Lisa Fazio. And thank you to our channel members so much for allowing me to cover cases like this. I really do appreciate each and every one of you guys. It allows me to cover Sebastian Rogers and keep this. Thank you to all of you guys who showed up today to keep this child's name out there and keep pressure on law enforcement. The FBI recently came through with a $50,000 reward for the finding Sebastian. Hopefully that will shake something loose. Hopefully somebody will see that and say, you know what, we do want to find Sebastian. And thank you so much. It's a super thanks and coffee gratitude. Thank you so much to each and every one of you. And thank you so much to Njaz for gifting channel membership. She gifted 2 during this live stream, which is so nice. If you guys got one of those, let me know who you are. Let me just, let's listen in to what Peter said. Let me just see what chat says. Let me see. But I'm just wondering, tell me what you guys think. Do you think part of the reason that neighbors didn't let their children over didn't have anything to do with Sebastian? Had to do with Chris Proudfoot. If you were a parent and you encountered him, think about how he went after neighbor Bobby and how she felt after her encounter. And she lives in the neighborhood. She's allowed to drive down her streets. How he ran off a news crew because they were on his property. They didn't want anybody searching the Bowersox property either. He had, Katie left the house as soon as she thought no one was looking. She couldn't wait to go, in my opinion. Marilyn says, in my opinion, Chris Proudfoot and Katie Proudfoot just wanted this to go away quickly. Yeah. Kami says, exactly, Edjaz, you'd be doing all you could to get information. Right. Edjaz says, I would welcome publicity if it was my child. Kami does not think this is going to end well. Well, no matter how it ends, thank you so much. No matter how it ends, it does need to have an end. And we cannot let what happened in the Summer Wells case happen on this case. We do need to know what happened to Sebastian. And I think by, just continuing to hit this and to continuing to, to go through all of these interviews, all these discrepancies, to me, it's like, let's go. Let's go. There, what further investigations are being done right now? We know you guys searched for him, but what else is being done to help find this missing special needs child? Because we're not going to let it go. And that's why, I know some people don't like AtNight and some people don't like Steve Fisher. And my feeling is, let as many people as want to investigate this have at it. I welcome everybody because I am on Sebastian's team. And anybody who wants to investigate this, anybody who wants to offer reward money for the return of Sebastian, or for tips that lead to finding him, I am all in on that. I only want to find Sebastian. That's really all I care about. And I know a lot of you guys feel the same way. Hey, Canadian True Crime. Mark David says, I bet Chris Proudfoot was always wearing his belt to intimidate Sebastian. You could see, like, they blamed Sebastian why, he didn't, why the neighbors didn't want to come over. I'll bet you dollars to donuts that if we talked to the neighbors, it was a lot more about Chris and Katie Proudfoot, why they didn't want their kids over there, than Sebastian. G of Twids says, I just hope Sebastian never hears all the bad things they said about him. Susie says, I think it's awful this poor boy is missing a year. Yeah. And I just want to know, like, where is this investigation? I feel like I'm tired of just being told, everything's open. We haven't cleared anybody. Everything's, it's been a year, and I just feel like, just with the child A, case alone, there should be something that could be done. Some charges that could be brought. Or just children so valueless in our society? Are we just gotten to the point where we just don't value a child, especially if they're special needs? Is that where we are? That we're just not willing to put resources into it? Because I just feel like this child needs to be found. And I just, we need to know what happened, and somebody needs to be held accountable. Katie tells us he walked out the door. I don't know why he walked out the door. Okay. So he walked out the door without a coat and without shoes. So my next question is, so what did you do? If you saw him walk out the door like that, did you lock it behind him? Because she said that it was locked. In other interviews, they didn't know how he got out because that front door was locked. Well, did you lock it? Who locked it? Who was there? And I still think that 3 a.m. video is significant. Who was out there with flashlights that night of all nights at 3 a.m. running around behind Stafford Court? Norma says, I wonder if Sebastian would have knocked on a neighbor's door for help. I think one of the neighbors would have told us, I hope. Holly puts up green hearts for Sebastian. Dab says, I wouldn't let my kids there. He's not yelling at my child. Yeah. And how many of the neighbors probably felt the same way? And maybe they don't want to speak out or come forward because they're afraid of this guy. He's a bully. Allegedly.
That wouldn't be surprising.
In my opinion, Chris Proudfoot is a bully, in my opinion.
At all. You hear of someone with that type of anger. I don't want my child, special needs or not, around someone angry. He accused Sebastian of lying to the Child Protective Services.
And Katie, what did she say? I haven't heard anything that Katie stood up for Sebastian or advocated for him. Even on Nancy Grace, on TV, national TV, she sat there and lied to Nancy Grace and to all of us that watched that interview and said it was several years ago, the CPS visit.
Yeah, regarding the neighbors, I think he was very isolated, and that could have been up. The description of the autism, I think, is, there's an expectation that loving parents will minimize because it's very hard to accept. He had struggles. I wish for immediate legislation to protect children from predatory and abusive non-biological guardians. Laws don't stop that sort of thing. We have a case here in Maine where, and this actually is a parallel, where a boy was beat to death by mother, father, and grandmother. He was still alive when he was brought to the hospital, and they did CPR on him, and the head charge nurse came out and told the mother and the grandmother, hey, his pulse is back, which the expectation would be wonderful news. They both, but he's a liar. They were concerned about what they both charged with murder now, along with the father. But all the laws in the world, we have the same laws that protect you and I as parents and can be exploited by others. Can't be there 24/7. What we can do is enforce laws, and that would be a different type of solution.
And I just want to know why nothing was done. Why are we sitting here a year later just being told, yeah, it's still open, when she says he walked out the door? So I want to know, what did she say the first day when she said he was missing? Did she tell law enforcement he walked out the door then? Or was this 8 days later? Can there an obstruction charge be filed? Can something be filed? Diane says, over a year, our community has been wondering about this case. Yeah. Thanks, Diane. Prayers for Sebastian from Jody. Mama May or Wildlife says, hey, y'all, Silver's on the scene. Needs some help. On anybody can help him get hold of him. He wants someone that can dive or search this pond. Joel says, Peter is brilliant. Susan says, I was thinking about Sebastian the past few days. Like, where is he? Yep. Kami says, I completely agree, and have people held accountable. Yeah. Jody says, you have to be so careful these days, in my opinion. Orange Rose says, we need closure. Sebastian deserves closure. You're right. He deserves to have some kind of accountability for the fact that he just disappeared. This child did not evaporate from inside his own home. And Katie told us, I don't know why he walked out the door. And then the other really big red flag was, I went to wake him. When I woke him up, he wasn't there. Which tells me she knew he wasn't there, because she saw him go out the door with no shoes on, no shirt. Was he pushed out the door? Was he helped out the door? Was somebody at the door waiting for him? Did she walk him out the door? But to me, there needs to be some kind of accountability in this case. Diane says, Katie Proudfoot has been out to dinner a few times with her friends with an autistic kid near Sebastian's age. Oh, that's interesting. Joel says, I don't think Sebastian ever left that house on his 2 feet, allegedly. Help and Hope discussion with Annette. Solar says, smash the like button. It's free and she deserves it. Thank you. Kim G says, Katie Proudfoot was mainly home alone, so it says a lot about her vibe, body language, where other mothers didn't talk with her. She apparently doesn't have neighborhood women friends. Well, can you imagine? Would you want to be friends and have to go over there and like deal with Chris Proudfoot? Yeah, negligence. There was a child protective case, multiple ones, according to Chris Proudfoot, in New Mexico, and in the state where they were living, Tennessee. So why not deep dive into that and follow up with those and bring charges based on that? Kathleen says he didn't go out the door by himself, in her opinion. Sasha said there seems to be not one at all, even Hawkins County, even the FBI there the next day. Kim wants to know, did you drive around with shoes and a coat? Shauna says it's a coded door. It locks by itself. So if she knows he walked out the door with no shoes on, no shirt, what if she just passively watched him walk out the door? If you want to, let's, frame it as like the best case scenario for her, allegedly. And she just passively watched him. What responsibility do you have as a parent of a special needs child to go get them and put them in shoes and a coat and bring them back into the house. Or maybe, you know, it's just the whole thing is weird. Jean says, I think Sebastian heard everything Chris Proudfoot and Katie Proudfoot have to say about him and much worse. Yeah. I think, you know, if they're willing to say this in public after he's disappeared, what did they say on the phone conversation? I believe that this child was the scapegoat in that family. Kathy says neither one of their stories add up. And JDR puts up green clovers and a blue heart for Sebastian. All right, guys. Well, I think I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for coming by to spend a little bit of time with me. I'll be doing another live stream in just a couple of days, so be on the lookout for that. And don't forget, April 9th is going to be the hearing for the Idaho student case. So I'll be airing that as well. And I will see you on the next time. Please subscribe. It's free and it does help me out.